Okay. We're going to be doing a TinkerCAD tutorial here, a basic tutorial on how to use some basic shapes and create what we are considering a cookie cutter design in TinkerCAD. So what I've done is I've gone and created a new design, and I am in a blank work plane right here. Notice in my work plane, this is a work plane that we can rotate all around, and we're going to see when we put some objects on here what that'll look like in a three-dimensional aspect. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is on my right hand side is I have some basic shapes in TinkerCAD. Now we can get into some more advanced shapes in some future tutorials, but we're going to go ahead and work with a basic shape. And what we're going to be creating today is a design of a cookie cutter that will cut out a shape of a square if we push it down into some clay. So I'm going to go ahead and drag a basic box onto the screen. Now when I drag that box onto the screen, we can do anything we want with that box. Notice that when I point to the corners of the box, some of the dimensions come up, and I can make the box bigger or smaller by dragging those dimensions. Okay, so that is an easy way to go ahead and make the box. Now notice I can make the box taller as well. I can make the box smaller as well. And this arrow right here actually lifts the box up off the work plane as well. Because this is working in three-dimensional space, we want to see that we may, and we will be actually lifting an object off that work plane in a little bit. But we're going to leave this one back down at the 0 level on our work plane for now, because we're going to be operating with this one flat on the work plane. Now, I want to show one really important tool in TinkerCAD that will really help you do more specific designs. Over here on the top, you'll see a ruler that is selected. If I take this ruler and drag it onto the screen, what that's going to do, it's going to, when I click on a specific object, it's going to have all the dimensions for that object just stay on the screen. And what that'll help me do is I can click in any of these boxes and do a specific measurement for these. Now right now my measurements are in millimeters, so I have really a box that is 24 by 25 by 22. Now I'm going to change all of those, and it's simple to change them with the ruler on the screen, because what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and make this 40 by 40, which will be a nice square box for me. And I want to make this nice and thin, so I'm going to go ahead and make this a 5 millimeter height. And that's a real simple cookie cutter shape. Now, in order to make a cookie cutter, what we need to do is do an indentation into this box. So essentially we're going to cut out some of the shape that I just drew. Now to do that, what we actually have to do is create a second shape, and we're going to make that shape what's called a hole in TinkerCAD. Now a hole in TinkerCAD will take that space and make it negative space within this design. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this specific shape that I have right here, and we're going to duplicate it, because we're going to use this shape, make it a little bit smaller, and go ahead and put it into the middle of this and create that negative space. So to go ahead and duplicate a design, what you can do is click on the object up in the top left-hand corner here. I have a duplicate tool. I can also do Control D if you see that. But if I duplicate, it doesn't look like anything happened, but what it really did is it duplicated the design right on top of it. So I have two designs, and I just use my arrow to move the design off there. Now with this second design, again with the ruler on the screen, I have all the dimensions on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and change some of these dimensions, and this is going to be real important for the negative space that I need. I have to make it smaller. So we're going to go ahead and make this 35 by 35, which will be a smaller square. And I am going to make this a little bit taller. Let's just say, just for fun, I'm going to go ahead and make this 7 millimeters high. Now, when I make that 7 millimeters high, we are not making a box bigger, but I just want to show and exaggerate the negative space that's going to go in here. Now, I could take this and move this over, and you'll notice that it is sticking out the top. Now, it's not really a hole yet. We are going to make that a hole. But there is one other problem that I need to do. This is sitting flat on my work plane. I need to lift it off a little bit because I do want the bottom of my cookie cutter to be whole. If I'm going to do a cookie cutter that's kind of flat that way. Now you can have it go all the way through, or I can have it be up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 0 and move it up a little bit. Notice that now that box is just floating off the screen just a little bit. Now, I'm now going to move this over into the middle. And again, it is not creating negative space yet because this is a solid design. But to create the negative space, I click on the whole button. And right now, the smaller design is in the middle of my first initial box, and it's creating that negative space. Now, we do want a nice little square right in the middle, so I'm going to show us how to align this. TinkerCAD has some nice aligning tools. I'm going to go ahead and just draw a little square around that, both boxes, using my mouse. And what it did is it created or selected both of those shapes. Now, if you also want to select the shapes, you can hold the Shift key down and click on both shapes, and it will select them both. And what I'm going to do, up in the top left-hand corner, I'm going to click on the Align button. Excuse me, the right-hand corner. Click on the Align button. And when I do that, you're going to see the dots show up in the corners. This is aligning right to left. This is aligning top to bottom. When I click on both of those, you'll notice that it's showing them both aligned. I don't have to click on them again. And right now, what that did is it aligned my center whole box in the middle of my initial design. I can click on this little top button if I really want to see it, and you'll notice that it's right in the middle. Now, click back on the home view. And there's one other kind of thing so you can see the negative space. Again, I'm going to draw my box around here, select both designs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to group both shapes together. And by grouping both shapes together, you're going to see that I have created this negative space, or essentially this kind of cookie cutter design here. And I can kind of rotate it around so you can kind of see that that negative space is now drawn. Again, clicking on the object itself, my dimensions will come up, and I can make this bigger or smaller. Since they are grouped, everything will get bigger or smaller. The one nice thing here, just like a lot of programs, when you're using object-oriented programs and you're making things bigger, if I hold the Shift key down and make something bigger, the dimensions, all dimensions, will get bigger as we move forward. So you notice the sides, the top and the bottom, left and right, are getting bigger, 40 to 41 to 42. But notice all of my dimensions are getting bigger. Even my height is getting bigger. So if I hold the Shift key down, I am just making a bigger cookie cutter, which is kind of a nice thing to be able to do if I want to make something smaller or bigger. The reason you would want something to be bigger or smaller is because the time it would take to print. If I wanted to keep this back to where that 40 dimensions were as I initially started, that's where it would print. So right now, that is our initial cookie cutter design to make a hole. I am going to continue with some other tutorials to go into some more complicated shapes, but I thought this would be a good start for us right now to build our first cookie cutter shape. Please look back for some future designs. Thank you.